Hello and thanks for joining us for our mid-morning edition of Arirang News. I'm Mark Broom. Let's start by taking a look at the day's headlines. President Moon Jae-in tells the UN General Assembly that North Korea needs the world's help to come out of its international isolation. He also says the regime is sincere about completely denuclearizing. US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says he's going back to Pyongyang after receiving an invitation from the North Korean leader. Denuclearization and setting up a second US-North Korea summit will top his agenda. Plus, in a highly anticipated move, the Federal Reserve hikes interest rates, citing the strong American economy. US rates are now at their highest point since before the 2008 global financial crisis. Our top story this morning. President Moon Jae-in has been notifying UN member nations about the progress South Korea has made with North Korea. Delivering a keynote speech on Wednesday at the UN General Assembly, the South Korean leader said the shadow of war has been removed from the Korean peninsula. Our Blue House correspondent Shin Se-min reports from New York.
President Moon Jae-in has brought the international community up to speed on North Korea. Addressing UN member nations on the last leg of his trip to New York, the president spoke of the progress made with Pyongyang, from getting the regime to put down its nuclear weapons to disclosing its will for peace and prosperity in front of the world. The South Korean president, for the first time on the UN stage, also referred to bringing an official end to the Korean War.
전쟁 종식은 매우 절실합니다. 평화 체제로 가기 위해 반드시 거쳐야 할 과정입니다. 앞으로 비핵화를 위한 과감한 조치들이 관련국 사이에서 실행되고 종전선언으로 이어질 것을 기대합니다.
Adding to his case for a peaceful Korean peninsula, President Moon revealed his administration's plans to utilize the joint economic potential of the two Koreas. He mentioned his previous proposal of setting up a rail network including the North and the US, which would, in theory, connect the two Koreas to other Northeast Asian nations, just like the coal and steel community that paved the way for the creation of the European Union.
동아시아 철도 공동체는 향후 동아시아 에너지 공동체와 경제 공동체, 더 나아가 동북아 다자평화 안보 체제로 이어질 수 있는 출발점이 될 수 있을 것입니다.
He added through such plans, the Koreas will help reinvigorate the stalled economic potential of East Asia, the part of the world that accounts for a quarter of the world's economy. The South Korean leader also touched upon humanitarian issues, saying Korea, which suffered under Japan's wartime system of sexual enslavement, will be front and center of stamping out sexual violence in the disputed regions. The president is closing out of his four-day trip in New York, much of which he spent briefing South Korea's allies as well as international dignitaries on his latest summit with North Korea's Kim Jong-un. What's next is to see those seeds of diplomacy bear fruit, perhaps starting with full international backing for a new economic plan on the Korean peninsula while waiting on the next Kim-Trump summit. Shin Se-min, Arirang News, New York.
Now, President Moon Jae-in, on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly, held meetings with a couple of different world leaders on Wednesday as well. On the last day, he was in New York. He sat down with Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, as well as the Chilean President Sebastián Piñera, where the leaders agreed to shore up their respective bilateral ties. President Moon urged both nations to support Seoul's efforts to denuclearize the Korean peninsula. President Moon discussed ways to improve ties with Cairo by expanding their bilateral relations with defense-related industries. Meeting with his Chilean counterpart there, President Moon thrashed out ways to work out any of the kinks that might be in their 15-year-old bilateral FTA, while pushing for South Korea to join the Pacific Alliance. Now, after a series of diplomatic events on North Korea and its denuclearization, it has now been confirmed that Washington's top diplomat will be heading to North Korea next month. Mike Pompeo hopes to make progress on dismantling the regime's nuclear program and prepare for a second summit between US President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Lee Ji-won with more.
U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo will be traveling to North Korea in October in a fresh bid to breathe life into the stalled talks between Pyongyang and Washington. State Department spokesperson Heather Nauert confirmed the trip on Wednesday, shortly after Secretary Pompeo's meeting with North Korean Foreign Minister Ri Yong-ho on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. She said Pompeo accepted the North Korean leader's invitation to travel to Pyongyang next month to make further progress on the implementation of the Singapore Declaration, including the final fully verified denuclearization of the North, as well as to prepare for a second summit between the two leaders. The trip would be Pompeo's fourth to North Korea, which was initially planned for August until it got canceled by President Trump, as he thought there hadn't been enough progress made on denuclearization. Pompeo also tweeted about his, quote, very positive meeting with his North Korean counterpart. He uploaded 2 pictures of them shaking hands and talking, and said they discussed the upcoming summit and the next steps towards the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. Pompeo added that much work remains, but they will continue to move forward. This comes just hours after Pompeo gave an interview to CBS, where he said the U.S. is working to get the conditions right so it can accomplish as much as possible during the second summit. He added that the summit may happen in October, but it's more likely to happen sometime after that. President Trump has also been repeatedly saying during his trip to the UN that he will be meeting with Kim Jong-un soon. He said their second meeting will take place much like their first, except for the location. The two leaders had their historic first-ever North Korea-US summit in Singapore in June. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
Now, as a follow-up to that report, the United States may soon make a deal to denuclearize North Korea. This is according to the main man himself, US President Donald Trump, who cited very positive behind-the-scenes developments between the two sides, this during remarks at the UN Security Council and at a rare and fiery press conference on Wednesday. Oh Soo-young with this report.
The United States is making positive progress on striking a deal with North Korea on denuclearization, but isn't rushing to specify a timeline just yet. This is according to US President Donald Trump on Wednesday, after attending a gathering of world leaders at the UN General Assembly. Addressing criticism he failed to secure a timeline on denuclearization or concrete pledges from the North, Trump said there had been substantial follow-up action after his June 12 summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. He said many things are happening behind the scenes, away from the media, noting that US officials have been holding secret meetings with the North. Such progress, he said, is likely to produce good news in the coming months and years. The president also praised North Korean leader Kim Jong-un as a man he knows and likes, expressing confidence Kim also wants a deal to secure peace and prosperity for his regime. At a press conference later in the day, President Trump reiterated he isn't in a hurry to specify a timeline on denuclearizing North Korea, saying he has all the time in the world.
I don't want to get into the time game. You know why? I told Mike Pompeo, I said, Mike, don't get into the time game. We stopped them. They're taking down plants. They're taking down a lot of different testing areas. They're going to take down some more. You'll be hearing about that very soon. I don't want to go ahead of myself, but you'll be hearing about it soon.
He also insisted he hadn't given Kim Jong-un anything, amid criticism their Singapore summit has seen few concessions from North Korea. President Trump said until denuclearization occurs, international sanctions on the North must remain intact, including those on ship-to-ship transfers, which he previously said are being breached by certain nations. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Now, the nominee to become the next commander of US Forces, Korea General Robert Abrams, has stressed that all activities within the demilitarized zone, the DMZ, including a reduction in the number of guard posts, are under the jurisdiction of the United Nations. Speaking at his confirmation hearing before the Senate Armed Services Committee this week, Abrams stated that while the two Koreas continue their military dialogue, all related issues must be mediated, supervised and implemented by the UN command. His remarks come after the two Koreas agreed to shut a number of guard posts on both sides of the DMZ. Abrams also insisted that withdrawing American troops from the Korean Peninsula could lead to grave strategic risks. Now, it was a highly anticipated move, but the US Federal Reserve has hiked interest rates for the third time this year alone. It also raised this year's economic outlook for the United States. Kim Hyo-sun with this report.
The Fed raised interest rates by a quarter point on Wednesday as widely anticipated and indicated it plans to raise rates again in December. The Federal Reserve increased the target range for its benchmark interest rate to 2 to 2.25%, setting the rate at its highest level since April 2008. All 9 members of the Federal Open Market Committee voted in favor of the decision.
Today, the committee raised the target range for the federal funds rate by a quarter percentage point, bringing it to 2 to 2.25%. This action reflects the strength we see in the economy and is one more step in the process that we began almost 3 years ago of gradually returning interest rates to more normal levels.
This is the 8th increase since the Fed began normalizing policy in December 2015 and the 3rd rate hike in 2018. Along with the rate increase, the Fed also expressed a more optimistic outlook for the U.S. economy. It forecasts the economy will grow at a faster than expected 3.1% this year, an upward revision from the 2.8% projection back in June, adding it will continue to expand moderately for at least 3 more years. As the Fed also hinted on raising rates again in December, global market analysts are eyeing the speed of the rate hike. With the latest increase, the rate gap between South Korea and the U.S. widens to 0.75 percentage point, possibly prompting foreign investors to move capital out of South Korea. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
Now, as a follow-up to that report, the Bank of Korea's governor says the Federal Reserve's rate hike will likely have a limited impact on South Korea's capital markets. Governor Lee Ju-yeol told reporters on Thursday morning the pace of rate hikes in the US is in line with expectations and that a rate gap of 50 to 75 basis points is unlikely to trigger capital flight. On the BOK's rate decision later this month, Governor Lee said the bank will take into consideration domestic macroeconomic conditions, capital market stability, and the impact of the US-China trade war. US President Donald Trump has accused China of trying to meddle in the upcoming US midterm elections. He made the claim as he opened his UN Security Council speech in New York on Wednesday. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our Abrams. So, Adam, quite an allegation from President Trump.
That's right, Mark. President Trump said China is working to interfere in November's elections because of the escalating trade war between the two world powers. Take a look.
Regrettably, we found that China has been attempting to interfere in our upcoming 2018 election, coming up in November, against my administration. They do not want me or us to win because I am the first president ever to challenge China on trade. And we are winning on trade. We are winning at every level.
However, Trump provided no evidence to support his claim, and China immediately rejected the allegation.
I need to point out that China has all along followed the principle of non-interference in other countries' domestic affairs. This is a tradition of Chinese foreign policy. Our observance of this principle has received acclaim from the international community. We do not and will not interfere in any countries in domestic affairs. We refuse to accept any unwarranted accusations against China.
Meanwhile, Trump later tweeted photographs of extracts from a local newspaper in the key battleground state of Iowa. Trump claimed China had placed what he called propaganda ads. The commentary in the 4-page section said American farmers were suffering due to President Trump's trade policies. In other news, one of 2 suspects in the Novichok poisoning in Britain has been identified as a decorated colonel of Russia's military intelligence. The investigative website Bellingcat reported Wednesday that after a joint investigation with The Insider, the man identified by London as Ruslan Boshirov is actually GRU Colonel Anatoly Chepega. The 2 suspects have been charged with the attempted murders of former Russian spy Sergei Skripal and his daughter Yulia, as well as conspiracy. Russian President Vladimir Putin has repeatedly claimed that the pair have no links to the Kremlin. Actor Will Smith turned 50 on Tuesday and celebrated his birthday in style by bungee jumping from a helicopter over the Grand Canyon. He was accompanied by his family and friends and was interviewed by Alfonso Ribeiro, who is best known for his role as Carlton in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Smith was challenged to do the jump by YouTube channel Yes Theory, which uses the slogan "Seek Discomfort." Money raised from the jump will also go to a project called Education Cannot Wait, which provides access to education for children in crisis-affected areas. After making a historic speech at the UN General Assembly earlier this week, boy band BTS performed live on ABC's Good Morning America on Wednesday, calling them one of the biggest boy bands in the world. The 7-member group made a splash on the hit show. The group greeted a screaming crowd as they performed live. During the interview part of the show, RM, the leader of the group, called his speech at the UN the best moment of his life.
Thank you to Arirang, as always, for the world news there. Now, South Korea plans to conduct the first test flight of its locally developed booster engine in the coming weeks. Its name is Nuri, and the rocket is part of ongoing efforts to produce the Korea Space Launch Vehicle 2, which is a 3-stage rocket. Lee Seung-jae reports.
As part of long-term efforts to launch the Korea Space Launch Vehicle 2 by 2021, South Korea will conduct the first test flight of its locally developed booster engine by the end of next month. According to South Korea's Science and ICT Ministry, the test will take place sometime between October 25th and the 31st, but barring any unforeseen developments, the launch should take place on the primary date of October 25th. Named Nuri, the rocket was named through a nationwide contest. The word means world in ancient Korean and conveys the wishes for the homegrown rocket to travel into orbit and to bring back technological developments.
Around 6,300 people submitted more than 10,000 entries in the title competition. We selected the winner based on the name's theme, conformity, symbolism, and ingenuity.
The test launch will see the rocket fly for about 10 minutes, during which the performance of the new engine, control system, and other parts will be monitored. It's expected to attain a suborbital altitude of over 100 kilometers, some 160 seconds after the launch, and reach its peak altitude 300 seconds into flight before splashing down in international waters between South Korea's Jeju Island and Japan's Okinawa Island. If successful, 4 of the thrust engines will be used in the first stage and 1 on the second stage of the Chaos LV-2, as the whole rocket is scheduled to blast off in 2021. The rocket is to be South Korea's first space vehicle wholly designed and built in the country. It will be used to place unmanned satellites into orbit and for other commercial purposes. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Now, let's stay with science and tech news. When we think of robots, often bulky and rigid contraptions spring to mind, but there's a variety of other types that most people are not that aware of. But local scientists here in South Korea have developed a pair of soft robots that can actually change their color and shape depending on different temperatures. Jo Sung-min reports.
Researchers at Seoul National University have recently developed robots that can change their color and shape. These soft robots are designed to help people accomplish a range of tasks widely thought of as impossible for conventional machines. The heavy and rigid robots we're more familiar with are used in industries related to transportation and construction. Soft robots, on the other hand, are used for much more delicate tasks in fields like health, medicine, and manufacturing. Made of flexible materials, they're designed to emulate motions like those of living creatures. The robots developed at SNU are made using a special film, and they come in two different shapes, a flower and a butterfly. The film is designed to move and change shape in certain ways it detects a change in temperature. A dye applied to the films changes color depending on how warm or cold it is. And this is what enables the flower robot to bloom and the butterfly to flap its wings.
Some animals and plants have the ability to change their color, and that's exactly what our robots are intended to mimic. These features could be useful in many tasks in the future.
The research team adds that the new features the robots have will generate data that'll help upgrade the quality of robotic technology and help develop robots that are more advanced. Jo Sung-min, Arirang News.
Good morning. It was a chilly start to the day in most parts, while daily highs will rise as high as yesterday. And we'll enjoy more clear blue skies with highs rising rapidly by the afternoon to just below 25 degrees Celsius. And things will get cooler day by day, so it is time to take out our autumn jackets. With that, let's take a look at the international weather for viewers around the world. So South Korea will have mostly sunny skies with warm daily highs today. Some parts of North Korea had freezing morning lows this morning, but the temperatures will rise fast. The 24th typhoon of the season, Super Typhoon Trami, is now heading towards Japan. The storm is expected to make landfall on the Japanese island of Okinawa on Saturday. Then it could move northeast toward the Japanese mainland by Sunday. And morning lows in Melbourne are in the single digits these days, and Friday's rain will drag down the readings even further. In Vancouver, the clear fall weather continues on Thursday with mainly sunny skies. As for South America, Brazil's two major cities will have unstable weather conditions. Britain is set for frosty nights in some areas this weekend as the temperature plunges. Lastly, to Africa, Cairo will have a sizzling hot day under sunny skies. And that's the weather update for now.
Well, on that note, that's where we're going to leave it for now on this Thursday morning here in Seoul. Do stay tuned to Arirang TV. We have plenty more coming up for you, including our next newscast at noon Korea time with our very own Lee Ji-yoon. So until then, goodbye.